this is the main interface of Atlas CPQ. It's very streamlined, very easy to pick up and see. And I'm just going to take you through some of the navigation first, and then we'll get into a little bit more of how a salesperson might use it to develop a quote or a configuration in a quote. So I manage myself here, notifications up on the right where you would expect. I've got a search function that's going to show up here in any of our screens. We have a menu, very simplified menu, and the focus here is really on CRM related objects, contacts, customers, opportunities, quotes, and orders, really what that sales or customer service person needs in their day-to-day to function and use a configurator. I've got contacts here. I'm on contacts. If I go to customers, it's a very similar look and feel. I've got a filter here that I can use. So if as an example, if a salesperson is planning a trip to go to Chicago, they may want to filter by region so they can see who else they need to go visit, as they prepare for that trip. Quotes, very similar as well. So it's tabulating everything out. We've got some control over what columns you're going to see in your particular circumstance, but very well laid out, very organized and easy to see. I'm going to step into a company here and show you what that particular view looks like. Just a little bit of the periphery of this first, just the deals, quotes, and orders that we've done for that particular customer are available here very easily. I've got sort of a 360 view area that I can put information in, like total spent, other information about that customer, so we see that right in front, front and center. Continuing on, customer information, we have some leeway as to what we show in here. An area for attachments, so from any of our record objects here, we can attach files as needed. Looking here at the main area, this is our activity feed, and it defaults to every type of activity, but I can easily filter that down to the notes that we make and emails, opportunities, orders, and quotes. And something that I would like to point out here too is, when we send out a quote via a live quote, which I'll show you later, we get a response back. So we know when that customer opens that quote, which is really good feedback for the sales rep. And that's a modern functionality that we're all sort of expecting out of email. We're all using it, something like that today. So we've got that functionality as well. So that's really, whether it's contact or it's company, that's the general gist of the interface, nice and streamlined. And if we were to go and now look to the ways to create a quote with our software, we'll just go ahead and quote this here. And this is our quote page. There are 3 ways that Atlas allows somebody to enter in items on a quote. And I'm going to go through all 3 of them with you. So the first one is quick entry. And just because this is a configurator or guided selling doesn't mean that you want to lose that option to put something in quickly if a sales rep or a B2B customer knows that particular item, right? So we still maintain that functionality where we can add a group. Just if we know something about the SKU or the name, we can put that in. We can add it very quickly and change the quantity, pricing, different things that we can put in here to help move that sale along. But the key here is we don't lose that functionality of being able to enter something in quickly. Now that obviously doesn't take any configuration to do, but it's still something that we want to have. So I'm going to move into another method that can be used to add items to the quote, and that's going to be guided selling. So if I select this catalog here, and I go into our guided selling for that. So I'm going to get a series of filters on my left-hand side, and this is going to be how we can go from thousands of SKUs down to a small handful or even just one. So kind of that Amazon-like interface, e-commerce interface. And I'm just going to select these drop downs, or excuse me, these filters, and start going into the particular product. So you can see I'm drilling in, I'm starting to get images. So if images help your sale, we can drive things that way. If not, we can always use a table view like this if images don't help. On these particular tiles, we can put information such as margin information if that helps your salesperson through the negotiation. We can put descriptions of the product if that helps. But I'm going to continue here and just filter down with these filters, selecting a couple items to get to a shorter and shorter list. So it very quickly goes from a large group of SKUs down to a very narrow set of SKUs. And we can put, cross-sell and upsell validations on this, discount structures for your customers, any new promotions, all of that would be available here in real time. And so in this example, I've now found 3 on my short list. As a experienced salesperson, I know the only difference between these is length in this example. I'm going to go ahead and add a 25-foot length to that. If I did not have the answer that I was looking for, the SKU that I was looking for, in this example, we've got the opportunity to configure something custom. So I'm going to go into our configurator in a different fashion in just a moment, but we could also make that available here from guided selling if it's natural to have that in your sales flow, right? So now I've added that this particular tubing assembly to my quote. I'm going to go back and take a look at that. So now it's here on the bottom, and I'm beginning to realize that, tubing and phones don't really go together so well. So I want to organize this a little bit, and I'm going to put a group in here, just call it phones, and get off of that. And then I'm going to go ahead and continue on into configuration. Okay, so guided selling is going to be used when we want to go from a lot of SKUs down to just a handful or down to one, but configure is going to be used when we don't know what the final product's going to look like, and we actually need to configure and put in information about that to get to the final configuration of the product. So this particular one, sort of staying with tubing, is set up in a couple of different ways. So we have flexibility as to how we build out the configurator for your particular product or service. So nothing's really set in stone when we start. And I really like this particular example because there's 2 ways to start with a configuration. This first part, I'm going to step into design rather than jumping right into the configurator. And the reason we might use design is sometimes when you're talking to a customer, they really know the situation that they're in, but they don't really know exactly what they need. They need your help to determine that. So this is really designed to be a little bit of a survey. And in this case, I'm going to just click through these pretty quickly. But I'm going to make some selections about the media that they're going to process through these pipes, the temperature range that they're going to be, in a pressure range. And once I finally reach pressure range, I've based on my business rules, I've determined I know enough to make a recommendation up here that we need to go with the tube diameter of 6-inch or 9-inch. So that's good information to know, and that'll be later visible later on in the configuration when we get to that proper. I'm going to continue on, and I'm going to see now that I see some options that are grayed out, and these are grayed out because based on the media that we're going to be putting through these pipes, some of these are not recommended. Okay. In addition to being able to make that validation and gray those out, we might need to add files. I might add an image. Right, so we add the files as we need to. They're available right away, very quickly. I'm going to move back up here, sort of streamline this a bit, show you some other validation rules that we have baked into this. I'm going to go ahead and select PVC as my tube material, and I now have a new question popping up that's asking me, is this a hard requirement for the project or just a preference? And if I select a requirement, now my validation shows up in red. It's a little more important than just a recommendation. It's an actual requirement. And if I select preference, that sort of cools off a little bit in color here. So different ways that we can do that and base that, give different attributes to the answer and different ramifications of how we answer that question. So I've gone now through that little survey that's going to help me in the configuration itself, give me a head start. So I'm going to move here to the configurator. So a little bit of layout here. You've seen some of it. I've got an area for images if imaging helps in the configuration. My summary field is where validations such as the survey analysis and others are going to show up. I'll come back to this numerous times. And then we're also going to see a running total of the options and the pricing as we select them, and even discounts, you'll see that. Here we've got obviously a reset, take us back to the beginning if we need it. History, so we could go back into your sales history and find items and start from a configuration you did in the past. We could also save favorites or start from a series of semi-configured items if that made sense for your business. So our configurator is set up as really a series of questions and answers, and there's different ways that we can ask these questions, and you see a number of them here. I can choose images, I can choose pictures, radio buttons, show you some tables in a little bit, but every time we ask a question, that now is going to make changes throughout the configurator because each time we select an option, it begets more questions or options, and it also eliminates some from view. So if you look here, I'm defaulted on just a straight line example, and it's asking me for a tube length. But if I were to select this Z shape in this example with A, B, and C pipes, I click on that. Now I have an area to put in lengths for A, B, and C. So very quick to operate, not waiting very long to see that change happen pretty much in real time. And again, this is an example of choosing from an image. I'll go back here to straight line just to keep things simple. You can see that I'm at 6-inch diameter, so that's part of my recommendation. I want to select PVC as my tube material. So here on my tube material, this is set up as a table. So if you don't want a drop down or a radio button, but you'd rather have a table because there's going to be additional information for your salesperson to consider or have a conversation with the customer, we make that available. So here I select PVC, and for that 6-inch diameter, the salesperson is now seeing the price per linear foot. Going to continue on, select my first elbow, and when I do that, I see some more information showing up here. I can add a connection hat for this particular example, and that is something that I'm talking to the customer about, and I'm adding that. And you see now that my connector type, the connection hat, these are showing up in real time in my summary field. Along with this connection hat, if you didn't notice, I have a special offer to upgrade this connection hat for half price if I select a particular type T2 connector. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and right away you see that reflected in the summary field. Okay, so continuing on, I might change my thickness from the defaults or my hardness in these drop downs. In this case, I'm not going to, but I do need to put in a specified length. And so as soon as I click off of this, I want you to see that what changes happen here. And a couple things go on. First, I now have a full length of tubing, so I can apply that versus my linear cost per linear foot and put that into my summary pricing. In addition, since these pipes are pre-stocked in 50, 25, and 10-foot lengths, I'm calculating how many of those lengths that I'm going to need. In addition, since these are all going to be one continuous run in this example, I do need connectors, and we're automatically calculating the number of connector sleeves for this. I can continue that conversation with my customer. I can see that we talk about reinforcement, and they might tell me that I need to have ring spacing every 25 feet. So it's automatically going to calculate how many do I need. It's going to put that down here in my summary field, and maybe by the end of the conversation or tomorrow they call me back and say, you know what, we need to put that spacing at every 20 feet. So we make that change. We see it reflected here and then also here in the summary. Now also, because I have four different tubes that I'm going to put together, I've got a new validation comes up. It says, because I'm using connector sleeves, I've got to choose a bonding adhesive or a glue, right? So now I continue on and I see that under my bonding adhesive, I've got one that's grayed out, and that's grayed out because it's only to be used in cast iron or clay tubing. I have two others. If I select type B, I have a compatibility warning, and this is an example of one of those soft warnings that says, you know, type B can be used in this situation, but it's not recommended. If you have it, use type C. Sure enough, I have type C. So I go ahead and select that, and my validation warning will go away. I'm going to dive into a couple of these others just to show you some of the capability and spur some conversation for later. You know, we might have some information we want to show about shipping. Could be where it's coming from, who the carrier is, whether you want items to ship as a single package or separate. That all can be selected. We might have accessories that aren't really part of the configuration itself, but that go along with it. So we're going to want to add that. And then it's always nice to be able to check availability. So in this availability tab, if I click check availability, it's going to look through all of those particular items and tell me which ones are unavailable. So I can have that conversation with the customer and take that opportunity to find an alternate solution, or at least let them know that we might have a day or two before we can ship it because we're waiting for things to come in. So sort of associated with that, now that we've configured the particular assembly that we're going to put together, I want to take a look and see what this looks like from a bill of materials perspective. So Atlas CPQ is going to go ahead and dynamically create the bill of materials as you see it is here for everything that's going to go into that assembly. And we can integrate Atlas to your ERP. So if the order gets placed, that BOM will go ahead and create a BOM in your ERP and go out to your shop floor as you would normally expect. In addition to bill of materials, we can look at items like the support brackets. If you recall, this really isn't part of the assembly, but just something else that needs to go along. So it's not going to make it onto the BOM, but it is going to make it onto the order. And then we also have routings for the shop floor. So our routing capability, we're going to be able to write the routings as you need to with any level of detail that you like. So if you look here in these comments, we can get very detailed about what we want to have happen, and this all can change dynamically. So I want to point out the cut operation here, because with 126 feet, we know that these are the pipes that we need to use, but we do have to take that 10-foot tube and make it a 1-foot tube. So we're going to cut 9 feet off of the end. And just to show you how fast this really goes, if that were to change to 127 feet, and I go ahead and I look at those routings, it's now changed it to cut 8 feet off of the end, so I'm left with 2 feet. So just to show how we can make that dynamic, not only will it show up dynamically, but the comments within our routing can be made dynamic as well. Moving here to the last portion is obviously the price portion of the CPQ. So here's an example that a salesperson might see with some discounting of capability as well as visibility on cost and margin. In a B2B situation, you're probably not going to show cost and margin, but for a salesperson, it's very good for the negotiation process, right? So they can maximize what the company makes and what they make, all while pleasing the customer at the same time. So in this example, I'm going to put in a 10% discount, and this discount shows up right away here in the summary field. You can see that this discount is applying just to the tubing. Now, if your business rules state that you want that discount to apply to everything, we could do that. If you were in a situation where you had hardware, software, and services, we could put that discount wherever you like, discount each category differently, however you'd like to set it up. But in this particular case, it's just the tubing. Continuing on, sometimes you're not discounting by percent, you're discounting by whole dollars. So here's a whole dollar discount, real time, also added, to the summary. continue on, because this is a tougher negotiation, I might have to add another percentage discount. It shows up here in the summary as a level 3 discount, and now I have a validation rule kicking in. I'm going to need authorization for this particular one, because my margin here is now slipped below 15%. So I've got some buttons here to have to request authorization for that. I can have that conversation with the customer, indicating, you know, I'm going to need authorization for that. I'm going to submit that right away. You should know in a couple of minutes. Taking that one step further, you know, when we run the math on this discount, if the discount gets to be too much and now our margin is slipped below 10%, it's not good enough to send it to my boss for authorization. This has to go to my boss's boss for authorization. So now we've got sort of that code red validation kicking in again. Same conversation with the customer. Might change the wait time on that, having to go to an executive level for that authorization. But that's just some of the, you know, some of the capability that we've got built into this. So let me take those discounts off just to streamline our quote process here. And I'm going to submit this now to the quote. So now you can see the quote back in Atlas. I've still got that phone, and looks like I forgot to put that power supply up there. So I'm just going to slide that up there and rearrange those. You can see how fast that is to rearrange in a grouping. I have my item that I got through guided selling, and then I've got my configured item as well as the accessories with that configured item all here. So now that I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and save this quote. And then once it saves, we're going to go ahead and take a look at how we might send that to a customer, a couple different examples of how we would do that. So a common way to do that would be to send them a proposal as a PDF or a Word document. So I can go ahead and choose proposal and pick from any number of templates that you get to customize. It's very easy to do. And in this case, we're going to create this particular template has a lot of rich content to it. We can create a template that's more simple, just a table, if that suits your business. But if you'd like to have something richer with images or a lot of text about the company or the product and continue that sales process within the quote, we certainly can do that. Here at the top, I've got buttons to print PDF or make a document. So it's going to save that, and then you can email it to a customer. Coming down here further, again, selling the company. An opportunity to sell yourself to that customer. We've got quote information. So here our quote number is 1700, customer and the date. Product information based on the order that I had it in the quote. So phone and a power supply, the item that I selected by guided selling, and then our custom configured product with a description of the configuration here in this bold, and then below more of the boilerplate about that particular product, and then the accessory for it, or the accessories for it. Further down, you know, payment schedule, terms and conditions. This is all dynamic, so we can put into Atlas in the back end, or if we're connected to your ERP, we might pull particular payment terms for that customer if it's net 30 for one and net 45 for another. You know, whichever it is, when you select that customer and you come here, those particular values will dynamically pull from that record to be customized to that particular customer. So that's one way to do it, sort of the classic way through a PDF. Another way to do it that is pretty unique and a feature of ours is called live quotes. So instead of proposal, if I come down to live quote, and I select who I want to send it to, type in whatever you like as far as messaging and subject, and I go ahead and send that live quote off to the customer. So now what this is going to do, it's going to send an email. Oh, it looks like I might have an error here. still having the error. I don't know if in my email, if I have an old example to show you. So notwithstanding this error that I've just been getting, we'll go back to one that I created earlier this morning. You can see it's $16.99 instead of $1,700. I'll go ahead and click on view quote. So this is what the customer would see that we send them. And it's going to take them to a URL that's going to be a secure URL where they can review the quote and then choose to reject it or go ahead and accept that order. And if they do accept that order, it's going to land back into Atlas as an order. So this is HTML, so you've got control over how you want this to look. You can look at the items in review, go ahead and accept that quote, and it would save that as an order in Atlas. So bypasses the need for having something like a DocuSign, right? And that's all included in Atlas at no additional charge. So that really concludes things for my demonstration of the Atlas interface and our configuration tools.
So what we're looking at is Verenia's 3D configuration tool, which is an exciting and pretty unique feature that actually gives us the ability to render 3D models on the configuration page, or in our case here, we're actually using one of our dev demo instances here inside of Atlas. And many customers have expressed a desire for a feature like this, so we're very delighted that we're able to fully implement what I consider to be one of the most powerful 3D modeling tools available. So what I'm going to be doing for you today is just showing off an example or two of our own 3D configurators. And as you can see for this first example, we are using an office chair. And what makes our 3D configurator so enticing is the fact that, it's painless data-wise, and it's not really all that demanding when it comes to implementing product assets. In addition, we do leverage some pretty robust tools to have everything render on page in real time, usually within a matter of milliseconds, depending on your connection, without having to leapfrog to another tab, loading, reloading the page. It's all done right in front of you very quickly, which is a complicated feature to get right, but we've done just that with some innovative API programming on the back end. So you can see that by clicking on the model, you can fully manipulate the view and angle of the chair while also being able to move, zoom, drag, and drop the model. So let me go ahead and just make a few selections here, change the upholstery. Let's maybe give the chair some arms. And you can see that that same 3D model is now populated with those new attributes, giving it a relatively smooth and seamless user experience. Let's maybe change the height to stool height and maybe change the color down there. And let's move on to the second example, which is a bike. And this has the same look and feel of the chair, only it uses a slightly different API methodology to tailor to the product. And that basically just means that it's customizable. And one big driving force of leveraging 3D inside your configurator is being able to look at those details and nuances of the product being displayed. And we can see if we zoom in here on the bike's gears and maybe change the selection, we get a very accurate representation of the item or the gears as shown here and very quickly. And again, one of the biggest things and what's most compelling about Verenia's 3D solution is the realism of the models. We work very hard to make each piece, each item, each product as realistic as possible so the user can really go in and see every characteristic, every element in an up-close fashion, kind of like what we're doing right here. And that's to really help push the user experience and, to also help push the sales potential. I think it's fair to say that photorealism in the solution is very big. So let me go ahead and just make a few other selections, maybe zoom in on the saddle and change the seat there. And we can see it's done very, very quickly and very accurately. And that is Verenia's 3D configurator inside of Atlas.